Hello and welcome to COVID Conversations here on WNCU 90.7 FM. We're streaming on YouTube, on Facebook, and Instagram. I'm your host, Kimberley Cartwright. I'm the News and Public Affairs Director at WNCU. And we're using the Zoom platform to talk about how COVID-19 is affecting our world. And today, we're going to talk about how the new child care tax credit is affecting families. And my guest is Sarai Faison. She's a wife and a mom living in Durham, North Carolina. Her family will benefit from new expansions of the child tax credit. And we'll talk about how she and her loved ones have managed through COVID-19 and how the child tax credit will benefit her family. Before we start, here's some background information from the IRS so you'll get a good idea about what we're talking about. The Internal Revenue Service has started sending letters to more than 36 million American families who tax returns filed with the agency may be eligible to receive monthly child tax credit payments that started in July. The expanded and newly advanceable child tax credit was authorized by the American Rescue Plan Act enacted in March. Letters are going to families who will be eligible based on information that they included in their 2019 and 2020 federal income tax return, or who used the non-filers tool on irs.gov last year to register for an economic impact payment. A little bit more. Bear with me. Eligible families will begin receiving advance payments either by direct deposit or by check. The payment will be up to $300 per month for each qualifying child under age 6 and up to $250 per month for each qualifying child who is between 6 and 17. The IRS will issue advanced child tax credit payments on July 15th, August 13th, September 15th, August 15th, November 15th, and December 15th. The tax credit is not permanent, however, and I want to now go to my guest, Sarai Faison, one of the 36 million American households who will receive the payments. Hello, Sarai, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so very welcome. I want to start to talk about your family unit. How many people are in your family?
We're a family of 4, so it's myself and my husband, and we have 2 children, a 9-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son.
So how rambunctious are your children?
My door is locked for a reason right now in my office, so if you hear noises, that's them. That answers your question, but yeah, very active. And my daughter's into dance, and my son's 3, so he's into everything. So it's been an experience because we've all been home basically since March of 2020. So they are as active as I thought they were.
Yes.
Inside.
So, and being inside. So have they, well, I know your 9-year-old is old enough for school. Mm-hmm. Your 3-year-old. So what was it like with your daughter trying to make arrangements for school?
Yeah, so she is, when we first went into the lockdown, she was a 2nd grader, actually. Mm-hmm. That's crazy to think about. So she was in 2nd grade. It was, nearing the end of her 2nd grade year. First, they told us it was going to be 2 weeks, that quick. They said it's going to be 2 weeks, and then we'll all be back to normal. Obviously, that didn't happen. So she finished out 2nd grade at home. And it was still, it was a lot of uncertainty then. We were just kind of going with the flow. And then 3rd grade rolls around the fall of 2020 and schools still weren't open. So she essentially did all her 3rd grade year virtually and half of her 2nd grade year virtually, which really, when you think about it, that's a big chunk of time of a kid's life. I mean, we could talk about, she's even expressed some anxiety. She's like, it's been so long since I've been in school, and so there's that aspect of it. So to answer your question, we just really were thrown into the homeschooling / virtual schooling environment, and she did not go back once they opened the schools up again at the end of this past year. So we kept her fully virtual since, we were lucky to be able to do that. She actually really thrived in the virtual environment, which we were happy with. I know that hasn't been the experience for every family, so it worked for us. But obviously, I think an in-person experience is going to be better for her. So we're hopeful that in this in the next month, yeah, she'll be able to attend in person. That's the plan.
So what are some of the other adjustments have you had to make? Have you been able to work from home?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. I actually started a new job like a week after the lockdown. So I have literally never actually worked in the office for my new job. So I was able to be fully remote the entire time, which is obviously a privilege and a blessing to be able to do that. And my son was supposed to start daycare sometime in 2020, and he didn't because of the pandemic. And so my husband was able to take some time off. So we kind of went down to a one income for a while. So we were all here at home. And again, I think that's a privilege that I was able to continue my job and my husband could take some time away. And so he really did the heavy lifting of managing her virtual schooling and taking care of the toddler at the same time. So we made it work and we were able to be flexible. So those were the kind of the changes that took place during all of that, juggling. Kids couldn't go anywhere and my mom couldn't watch them because of, risk and household and mixing and pods. And so, yeah, we were kind of like a self-contained unit for quite a while.
So, and then your 3-year-old has never known daycare.
Nope, he has not. Yeah, so he's missed out on, probably a good bit of socialization over the last year and a half, or, over half of his life. He's been, the only kid he knows is his sister. Yeah.
So how would you say overall that the pandemic has affected your family? Have you become closer? Have you developed wantings to always be able to work in a pod? How has that impacted your family?
Yeah, I think overall, it was. I just kind of think like we got through it. Thankfully, we all made it through healthy. We learned. I think my husband and I learned the value of having a flexible work. Work and managers and bosses that you acknowledge that you have these competing priorities. So I think we gained some clarity about what we're going to expect going forward from an employer, because we now know that they can actually be pretty flexible. Some of that rigidity that we just assumed was, how things should be done, kind of turns out that's really not the case. And so you do kind of figure out, we have options and we know what works best and what type of employer is most supportive. And then on the kids side, I actually enjoyed having my little one around a lot, because when my daughter was his age, she was in daycare full time and I was in the office full time. So I feel like I probably did miss some things of just the little things that they do all day. So I think from that aspect, it was kind of fun. And my daughter, with the virtual school, I think she picked up some resiliency that she would not have maybe had just being in person. She turns out she's pretty self-directed and has, some good motivation for learning. So, in those ways, in the positive aspect, I think we just kind of learned a lot about who we are and how we work best. But we also learned that it's really not fun to stay home unless you really want to. I'm not as much of a homebody as I thought I was.
So talk to me about like the financial stressors that you and your husband found yourself in because of COVID-19. You said you had to go down to a one income family during this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll be transparent. It was not. I think clearly some people were impacted financially more than our family was. So I just want to acknowledge that, because it makes you think in that way as well. everyone's situation is different, but and you do, there is some money savings and not having to buy, like I didn't buy children's clothes for almost a year. And you think of all these things that you spend money on that you no longer need to spend money on. But I think we still did have to tighten up in other areas, but there were some offsets with things that we weren't spending money on. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't a terribly negative financial impact, but there was an impact in that, just not as much money there. So putting off some bigger projects, and we were not big travel people, but that certainly wasn't in the cards. And with the uncertainty too, because you really never knew how long this was going to drag on. So it was not, even if you weren't drowning immediately, it didn't seem like the time to go out and do anything crazy financially either. So it was just a overall tightening up of our spending and things like that until we could get back both working.
So what was your feeling when you heard about the child tax credit? Was this a believable thing? And was it believable that you and your husband in your financial situation would be able to qualify for one of those checks?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It wasn't, but I kind of just was like, oh, okay, really? Because whenever you hear something that's like tax credit, IRS, it always sounds, you just assume it's going to be something complex, right? So, and there's going to be a lot of loopholes or things that are disqualifying, characteristics. So it's not that when I first heard about it, I didn't really jump to think that this would be something that my family would benefit from, because generally when things like that, you hear, things are very complicated, and it doesn't apply to as broad a group of people as this tax credit seems to. So it really was a while before I even thought about it. And funnily enough, I have friends and family across all situations, and no one really actually thought anything of it. It just seemed like one of those, oh, okay, what is this? This isn't exactly what we asked for. This is not what we thought we would be getting, but we'll see what it is. So that was my gut reaction to it.
So have you gotten your check? Has it come by way of your checking account or by the mail? Have you received money?
Not yet, but it was because of if I went to the IRS portal, so I am eligible, and I have a check that they had an old bank account on file that somehow I had closed in the intervening period between getting IRS from the money and now. So I do have it, and they'll tell you what's going on. So you can go right in there and update your checking account. So I did that, and so that my check's in the mail. So it will be in hand. It's documented, but that was something that I didn't realize that that was a step I needed to take. So I'm sure other people will probably find themselves in similar situations, but if they can't directly get it to your account, from what I understand is they'll mail it to you, and then you can go back and set up your deposit the way that you want.
So now that you know that and I'm going to do air quotes here, that your check is in the mail, then yes. So then how do you feel that this check is going to help your family?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about that, because it's funny, even up until about a month or so ago, I wasn't expecting the money, right? So my husband's recently gone back to work, and we're going to be picking up with, childcare things. And quite frankly, I have a son in daycare, so that's a lot more money than the government is sending me. But outside of like that big childcare expenses, there's still lots of back to school expenses and clothes and supplies and activities and after school care for my daughter. So there's a lot of, you can always find something that your kids need on a monthly basis. And so I think that's what we are anticipating that we would use the money for, is just all those expenses that are restarting that we didn't have in the last year and a half. That's just a cushion. You know, it's just knowing that is there. We haven't like earmarked any amount of money, but it's a kind of a different feeling. You kind of have to wrap your head around the fact like, oh, I'm going to keep getting it. Usually that's just not how most people are able to plan ahead. So it allows some freedom and flexibility. You can kind of think ahead about things you might want to do. So I haven't even gotten that far yet, but that's what I'm anticipating is like, you know, there's always something that comes up and we will have a better base to work from with that.
So thank you, Sarai, for being my guest today.
Thank you.
So Sarai is a wife and a mom living in Durham, and she's going to be able to take advantage of the child tax credit. And if you would like more information from the IRS about the child tax credit, you can go to the Child Tax Credit Update portal. And if you put that information into your browser, you'll go directly to the IRS. It's on their website. And again, I thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Sarai. Many, many blessings to you and your family.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. And thank you, audience, for watching via YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as listening to WNCU 90.7 FM. Be sure to like us, follow us, and subscribe to our pages to see more of our archive shows. I'm Kimberly Pierce Cartwright, your host, and we will see you next time.